From professing his love for the UFC to refusing the idea of fighting for anyone other than Dana White, this is Conor McGregor's post-retirement plans revealed. The Notorious doesn't see himself parting ways with the promotion that made him. While talking to Ariel Helwani on MMA Hour, Conor revealed that he wants to stick with the UFC forever, simply because he spent most of his career under their banner. According to the Irishman, his whole catalog is in the UFC, so he just doesn't see himself betraying the promotion that brought him so much fame and fortune. Say what you will about the man, but Conor has always been loyal to a fault. He's stuck with his coach and teammates from day one, and it's unlikely that he'll ever leave them high and dry. The way he sees it, the UFC is what brought him to the top, and he wants to repay the favor. Dana White has also acknowledged what McGregor has done for the company, and I doubt that they're ever gonna let go of him either. Mystic Mac is the face of MMA, really. He took the sport to the next level and made UFC into the household name that it is today. Conor is the promotion's poster boy, and the UFC wants to keep it that way for as long as they can. I mean, sure, there have been champions and legends after him for that sport, but no one's ever come close to Conor's charisma and his ability to sell a fight. Over the years, the Irishman sold more pay-per-views than anyone else on the UFC roster. If you don't believe me, just look at the highest-grossing fights that the promotion has put, and you'll find that Conor takes up most of those spots in the top 10. Most UFC fighters have one or two rivals in their entire careers, but Conor has had his hands full. Nate Diaz, Dustin Poirier, and Khabib Nurmagomedov are all right up there on the list of McGregor's top opponents, and they honestly owe the Irishman for most of their fame. Like it or not, Conor was right when he said that he'd made more millionaires in this game than anyone else, and that Dana has immensely profited from the Notorious One's antics. But lately, McGregor hasn't been able to back all that talk in the octagon. The Irishman's won only a single fight out of the last 4 he's been in. That too was against Donald Cerrone, who was already on his way out. He was smacked around by Khabib in the legendary match that broke every record. And Conor then also lost 2 back-to-back fights against Poirier. The last one resulted in a horrific injury, which caused Mystic Mac's leg to snap in half. Since then, he's been in recovery. Now, you could argue that the Eagle was a bad stylistic matchup for the Notorious due to his lack of wrestling ability, but his fights with Dustin were pure striking matches, and the Diamond was able to get the better of his rival in both of them. After suffering such a near-career-ending injury, everyone thought that Conor was done for. In the past, athletes who've suffered similar fates were never the same in the octagon, but Conor's determined to make it work. Even though nothing is final yet, the Notorious One is eyeing a return match with Michael Chandler at the end of 2023. The two coach their respective teams in the 31st season of The Ultimate Fighter, and it does look like Conor's overcome his injury. His return, though, is still in doubt because of issues with USADA. Initially, it was thought that the UFC was targeting a December 16th return in 2023 for the Notorious One. But the problem was that he had to be in USADA's testing pool for at least 6 months prior to competing. That meant that he had to submit samples to the anti-doping agency before June 16th. So far, there have been no updates or news from either USADA or by Conor himself on the matter. Previously, it was confirmed that he'd submitted the required paperwork and was re-entering the pool, but that was the last anyone heard about it. Not entering the testing pool means that Conor's return could be delayed even further. I know that's not what some of you wanted to hear, but that's just how things are right now. It might also mean that the UFC may be willing to grant him an exemption from the 6-month rule, or in the worst-case scenario, it means that we'll never get to see Conor in the octagon again. I don't like it either, guys, but it's hard for the UFC to convince someone like McGregor to get back in the octagon. Even Dana admitted that the Notorious One has so much money now that he can't really motivate him to get hit in the face again, so it'll all come down to whether Conor wants it himself or not. The UFC would love nothing more than to have their poster boy headline an event, but at this time, there's really not much they can do about it. Dana's right about McGregor having all the money in the world right now since he spends his time on yachts going around the globe partying. The thing is that Conor came from a very humble background and he worked hard to get where he's at right now, so it's understandable if he just wants to splash some of his hard-earned cash. Also, it's not like he's gonna run out of it anytime soon either. Mystic Mac has invested in many businesses and used his personal brand to grow them substantially. Just think about what he's gonna achieve fighting in the UFC again. Fame? He's already known by millions worldwide. Titles? He'll go down in history as the UFC's first ever double champ. There's nothing really that Dana could offer him any more than he already has. But to be fair, the Irishman has flirted with the idea of retiring in the past too. It's never stopped him from coming back to the UFC though. This time things are a little different, cause USADA's also in the mix, and they seem hell-bent on making sure that even someone as big and accomplished as Conor doesn't just get his way. Their determination is understandable if you ask me. McGregor's called them a crap organization in the past, and I doubt that they would look too kindly at something like that. The UFC can exempt him from the 6-month rule, but Dana is cautious about that cause of what happened with Brock Lesnar in 2016. The UFC let the Beast Incarnate compete without having him tested first, but later, it was discovered that he'd used banned substances before his fight. The UFC drew a lot of heat for it, and I doubt they want to repeat the same mistakes. Especially knowing how big Conor's gotten over the last couple of years after his injury. There have been rumors of steroid use in his case, but nothing's been confirmed yet. While Mystic Mac's return is mired in darkness, he's having all the fun he can. McGregor's been going around town doing all kinds of weird stuff. He's supporting Irish fighters, hanging out with OnlyFans models, and punching NBA mascots out cold. Conor likes to show up at bigger fights, which he makes bigger with his presence, actually. He was there when Gervonta Davis took out Ryan Garcia, and could even be seen motivating King Rai backstage after the fight. The Notorious One also showed up to the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship event when two of his former rivals, Chad Mendes and Eddie Alvarez, took each other on, shouting out instructions to them from the ringside. Conor even walked up to the ring after Mike Perry won in the main event with the BKFC strap across his shoulder and said that this was something that he'd love to do at some point. But for him, the UFC is the pinnacle. He doesn't want to fight under any other banner. Conor did have a boxing stint with Floyd Mayweather in 2017, but even then, he had Dana by his side as his promoter. While addressing Francis Ngannou's departure from the UFC, the Notorious One said that just wasn't for him. He wants to stick around with the UFC for as long as they would have him, and right now he's working towards consistency. Conor has had enough of the on-again, off-again nonsense, so he only wants to fight as much as he can in the UFC octagon, and after retiring, he doesn't want to join any other promotion at all, but he's expressed a desire to coach once he's done fighting professionally instead. This is Notorious One's second time on The Ultimate Fighter as a coach, and he's enjoyed his time teaching the young and upcoming talent. So that's another possibility for Conor after his retirement, but given the Irishman's wild and carefree nature, I have doubts about that. One thing's for sure though, you're not going to see Mystic Mac in anything else other than the UFC. So from refusing the idea of fighting for anyone else other than Dana White, to professing his love for the UFC, this was Conor McGregor's post-retirement plans revealed.